Hello there everyone and welcome to my new YouTube channel, the Vintage Hi-Fi Guy. So what are we all about? Well, it's all about me, to be honest. This has been about 40 years in the making, and as you can see, I'm not a natural on-screen presenter. I've got a bit of a face for radio, so why put myself onto YouTube channel where everybody seems to be under the age of 21 and just interested in becoming famous or becoming a celebrity? Well, I don't want to do either of those things. But what I want to do is to bring you a little bit of my story, and to bring it right up to date with things that may interest you, particularly if you're interested in audiovisual technology from the 70s, 80s and 90s. So I say, well, this is a bit about me and a little bit about the last 40 years. Well, it absolutely is. And so here's a bit of a potted history. So my father was in the RAF. He did his national service in the RAF and was allied to a radar division. And when I was a little kid, Dad always used to tell me stories about the days he was creating valve radios and cathode ray tubes and wiring them all up to help develop this new fangled thing called radar. And he used to tell me the story about two almost life-ending or life-changing things that he did, which he said that I must avoid at all costs. Now, basically, this wasn't sticking a knife in a toaster. This was about touching the back of a CRT tube with 25,000 volts of electricity going through it and being thrown pretty much all the way out the back of the laboratory in which he was working. And the second one was also with regard to the latent charge within capacitors within a valve radio. And both of these things absolutely fascinated me as a kid. And whilst, of course, there was a story about don't put knives in the toaster, David, there was also very much something in there about technology and his love of technology, even going back to when he was 18 or 19. And I guess that really shone through at the end of the 70s and 80s when we used to go on holidays in the UK, and we'd always go on holiday around the time that there was a hi-fi or an AV show happening in the local area. And distinctly remember the Harrogate hi-fi shows from the start of the 80s. And we'd go to North Yorkshire on holiday and spend possibly 2 days, rather than being on a beach at this time of year in the lovely summer weather, we'd spend 2 days going around hi-fi shows. And Dad was absolutely fascinated by the technology that was on offer at that time, and also some of the brands that were emerging into the market, such as Technics and Nakamichi. And I guess from there, I got incredibly interested in audiovisual equipment and hi-fi in particular, and so much so that at the Wolverhampton hi-fi show, date I don't know when, but certainly possibly 84 or 85, the Marantz CD63, the world's first CD player, was launched onto the market, and there was a competition to win the CD63. Now, bearing in mind, I don't think anyone in our families ever won anything at the time, but we entered the competition. I think Dad had to enter it because you had to be 16 or over to enter the competition, and we won. So this beautiful CD63 top-loading 15-track memory CD player winged its way to our house that at the time was in the Midlands, and we plugged it in to our old radiogram, a Nordmendy radiogram that was in the lounge, plugged it in on the DIN socket on the back, and you know, it sounded great, but we couldn't really tell any difference between the record player and the CD, otherwise there was no snap, crackle and pop. And I guess that winning of that competition launched Dad's first interest in buying proper hi-fi equipment to replace the Nordmendy radiogram, which had adorned the living room for donkey's years. And from there, I remember that a Denon amplifier came into the house, a pair of Haybrook speakers, which I've now got, and the CD player was linked up to that, and my God, could you really tell the difference then between a CD player and a cassette or or a record that was played on the old radiogram. And I guess having seen my father grow up with that technology, and then for me to live in a house where there was an interest in hi-fi separates rather than music centers and stack systems that you'd have at the time, is that really got me interested. And actually, it's something that when I became 18 and beyond, I still went to hi-fi shows. I left home and started working in the technology sector myself. So that leads me on to my personal interest in it. So in 1988, I was working in a department store selling hi-fi equipment. So I was exposed to some of the real world-class stuff that was going on at that time. So Sony Video 8 and PCM recording, which I don't think anyone had actually heard of at the time, was for sale in this department store in which I worked in Birmingham. And people from all over the country came to see this amazing new technology. So I was immersed in this as a job as well. So not only did I have a personal interest in it, but it became my career. And later I started working for JVC, Victor Company of Japan, where I spent 10 incredibly happy years. Best years of my life working for JVC, and worked alongside some of the finest brains in developing technology. So everything from the move from VHS to SVHS, and the creation of Mini DV, so the world's first professional recording format. I saw many audio technologies come and go. Digital audio tape was one memorable one, and of course I worked alongside other brands as well. Incredibly fascinating, and got to know an awful lot about research, development, sales and marketing. So really laid the groundwork of my career from there. I then took 2 years out of JVC and worked for ITV for 2 years at the ill-fated On Digital, or ITV Digital as it was latterly known. And that was a chance for me to go and experience something from the start. Bearing in mind that when I joined the team at Battersea, there were 3 desks in an office and a couple of maps on the wall to say where we were going to cover in the UK. And bearing in mind, we took something which didn't exist. Within 2 years, we'd launched it into the market, albeit with problems. But that, of course, is now, or was the forerunner to Freeview services in the UK and TDT services pretty much all over the world. And we created a standard in our front rooms, as we always said. And On Digital and ITV Digital will be subject to a further video from me at some point in the future, because it is a fascinating development of technology. I then went to Sony, and I had several years, almost 5 years at Sony Corporation, where I again was involved in the development of technology, particularly mini-disc and NetMD, and the first breed of Net Walkmans as well. So this was taking pre-iPod technology and connecting it up to a computer in the early days of relatively slow broadband, and getting people to download their Napster tracks onto new NetMD and Net Walkman devices. Again, an absolutely fascinating part of my career. Again, something which I'm incredibly proud to have on my CV. Now, at that time, the electronics market was changing, and the advent of online shopping was meaning that a lot of traditional retail and the way that we would research, develop and launch products into traditional retail was beginning to change. And I decided that that was the time that I would get out of consumer electronics, work in a completely different industry sector, and very much treat my history as a hobby in some ways, and I have great fondness for technology that was developed sort of mid-70s to early 90s, because those were the days when technology was being developed as a pioneering brand statement, but it was also being developed for the delight of consumers. And before the days where everything became so price conscious, is the quality of equipment at that time was some of the finest quality audio ever produced. And it's something that even now, very few brands can actually create the dynamic audio quality that was achieved by brands back in the day. So this channel is all about a bit of a celebration of audiovisual technology in its heyday, a day when valves had gone, transistors and chips were coming in, and a day before miniaturization became the focus of everything. In fact, in some markets, the bigger the better, as you'll see with some of the technology which I'm going to highlight over the next few videos. So if vintage tech and vintage hi-fi is of interest to you, I hope this channel will be particularly interesting. I know you have to put up with my ugly mug whilst I talk through various items in the future, but of course you can always switch the screen off and just listen to some of the stories. Now, also, I'm going to put some specifics within the description box as well, so you'll be able to see some of the items to which I'm referring. You can follow us on Facebook at the Vintage Hi-Fi Guy, and also I'll put links into my eBay channel as well, where I'm having to move some of this equipment that I've got in my office, workshop and at home as well, due to space reasons, as I've got a number of new projects coming up which I need space for. So that's me. I'm David. I'm the Vintage Hi-Fi Guy, and I hope you enjoy this channel now or in the future. And please recommend us to friends who also may be interested in it. And I look forward to seeing you very soon. Cheers for now. Bye.